Hey, yo, what is good, all you beautiful people out there? How y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the channel, and I am super excited because we are officially just over 24 hours away from the 2023 NFL Draft kicking off its first round, and I am so excited. I am so pumped for it, and I will be here on YouTube, by the way, for the NFL Draft. Yes, I will be live streaming here all 3 days of the NFL Draft, from the first overall pick all the way through Mr. Irrelevant. I will be here with you guys, watching every pick, reacting to every pick of the draft. It will be a lot of fun, and I cannot wait for it. I'm so excited for it. But that's tomorrow night. We are still 1 day away, and it wouldn't be fitting if I didn't put out at least one mock draft the day before. And I wanted to walk through this with you guys just to show you how I think the first round will go and how I think the first round should go. So let's not waste any time. Let's just dive straight into it, starting with the Carolina Panthers, obviously trading up, what is it, 8 spots from the 9th overall pick with the Chicago Bears up to 1. And there's been a lot of speculation. This might be the most unpredictable draft in, gosh, God, who knows how many years, where we legitimately don't have a true sense of who's going number 1. Could it be Bryce Young? Could it be CJ Stroud? Could it be Will Levis, if you believe Reddit threads for some reason? There's even there was a period of time where it could be Anthony Richardson. That's probably the least likely, though. But the real debate here is, do you go Bryce Young or do you go CJ Stroud? For me, since this process has begun, I believe it should be, and I believe it will be, Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. I mean, he's been, in my eyes, the number 1 pick from the very start of this whole process. And when you watch Bryce Young play at Alabama, at least for me, I don't know how you guys felt when you watched him, but for me, when I watched Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson, that was the first thing that popped into my mind. Was he reminds me of a mini Deshaun Watson as a football player. I just want to get that clear, as a football player. But yeah, it wouldn't make sense for the Panthers to trade up all those assets, including DJ Moore, who was one of the reasons why I felt so optimistic about that Panthers team coming into the offseason, to give all that up to take somebody other than Bryce Young here, where he might be the safest quarterback to take in this class, and definitely one with not the highest upside, but with still a high upside nonetheless. Plus, with that coaching staff, with that, just that team in general, I feel really comfortable about Bryce Young being that team's franchise quarterback, the way that Trevor Lawrence has been for the Jacksonville Jaguars, etc. And now we get to the fun part. The Houston Texans at 2. Now, this has been a topic of conversation. If the Panthers do, in fact, take Bryce Young at 1, it's not a guarantee that the Houston Texans are going to take a quarterback here. If they do, it could be CJ Stroud. It could even be Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. It could not be a quarterback at all. They could stick here and take someone like Will Anderson, or they could trade down with one of these QB needy teams and get some more draft capital. Because let's be honest, the Houston Texans are not ready to compete right now. They are far from it. And D'Amico Ryans is going to be given a long leash. And I think ownership knows that, hey, this thing is not going to be turned around year 1. It's going to be a process. It's going to take time. And I wouldn't be shocked if they don't take a quarterback in this first round, and with either of the 2 picks they have, and just kick the can to hope you can get one of these top quarterbacks next year, either Caleb Williams or Drake May. But do you really want to run that risk? Do you really think you're still going to be that bad where you can still be in position? You probably will, because this roster isn't the most talented in the world, but they did spend a lot of money in free agency. They are set up nicely in the draft so far. So it really, you don't know where this could go. I think ultimately they will come to their senses, and I do think they will ultimately, where is he? There he is. Take CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. It's just too much risk involved. It really is. It's the hope that you can maybe get Caleb Williams next year. And if you can, if you are bad enough that you can get Caleb Williams, then awesome. But right now, in the moment in time, it's just too big of a risk to think that far into the future and hope that it can turn out that way for you when you could have had Bryce Young this year had you not, had Lovie Smith basically not screwed you out of the number one pick. But CJ Stroud, he's the best option right now. It's not, I mean, unless you want to kick the can with Carson Wentz for a year. And even then, I don't even know Carson Wentz will be bad enough to get you into the top 5 next year for one of those quarterbacks. So CJ Stroud, it's best to just take him now, take a quarterback now, mold him, develop him. At least you have a piece that you can build around at the quarterback position. So, and now we get to number 3 with the Arizona Cardinals, and this could absolutely be a trade down situation. I think they can still trade down with a team also picking in the top 10 and still get one of these blue chip defensive prospects to build around. Because Arizona defensively, like everyone wants to talk about the offense, everyone talks about Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins wanting out. What I think a lot of people don't really talk about that much with the Cardinals is that, especially last year, their defense was soft last year. I mean, the whole team was soft, but their defense was soft. They need some semblance of a blue chip defensive prospect that they can draft and build the identity of their defense around. But I also think they can trade down and still get one of those guys. And you look at Anthony Richardson still on the board, and there is one team that I heard about this at the beginning of the draft process, and I fell in love with the idea of it. And it is the Detroit Lions swapping pick 6 and 3. And let's see here. Let's say, how about pick 48? 48 or 55. And let's chuck in next year's third. They are not interested in offering the trade. Well, hey, clearly they were. So there we are. I love this. They're going to trade up the Detroit Lions. Why not, man? Trade up and get, where is he? Anthony Richardson. I mean, my God, it's a dream. It's a dream scenario if you're the Detroit Lions. I've heard a lot of Lions fans say they'd be against this. For the life of me, can't understand why, because he doesn't have to play right away. He's not ready to play right away. He is as raw could be. But he'll be going to a situation in Detroit where he's not going to have to play right away. He'll be behind Jared Goff, who, by the way, still has 2 years left on his deal. And that's another reason a lot of Lions fans are like, we can win with Jared Goff. And you can. I agree. You can absolutely win with Jared Goff at quarterback. But they also know that Jared Goff can only take you so far. The team has a certain ceiling with Jared Goff. You could still absolutely make the playoffs with him. You can even make a little nice run in the playoffs with him. Are you winning a championship with him? I don't think so. Anthony Richardson, you get him in the building, he'll sit for 2 years with that coaching, with that offense behind that offensive line, with those receivers. If he's developed properly, Anthony Richardson's one of those guys like these Patrick Mahomes, these Josh Allen, these Jalen Hurts type of guys, where if they land in the right spot and they're coached properly and developed properly, sky is the absolute limit. So, and out of all these teams, I feel like the best landing spot would be either Detroit or Seattle, teams that don't need quarterback immediately, but 2-3 years down the road, he will be a massive player if developed properly. And that's the key here. He has to be properly developed. And in Detroit, I do think I trust that coaching staff enough to develop him properly, which means the Indianapolis Colts, I mean, it's pretty straightforward here. Will Levis, He's the only real quarterback, first round caliber quarterback left, unless you want to believe Hendon Hooker is a first round quarterback. I personally don't. But Will Levis is the pick here. And even if Anthony Richardson was still on the board, I would still take Will Levis if I was the Colts, mainly because he's really the only one out of those two that's ready to start right away. And because if Anthony Richardson went to Indianapolis, he's a guy that's going to have to sit for a year or two. And Gardner Minshew is either going to get hurt or not play well enough to continue the rest of the year. So he would have to play at some point, and I don't like that. I like that for Will Levis because despite what a lot of people say about him, I think his floor is high enough to be able to start year one. And there's a lot of aspects of his game that he definitely needs to work on. He definitely needs to develop in a lot of aspects of his game, but his team at Kentucky was dog shit. So, where at least in Indianapolis, he'll have some decent semblance of a team there. I mean, after all, last year they had playoff expectations going into the year last year, and then just I don't know what happened. Things just completely fell apart. But I think Indianapolis would be the best landing spot for Will Levis in this situation. Now, Seattle at 5. I mean, this just feels like a Jalen Carter landing spot. I mean, Seattle and Pete Carroll, they've shown multiple times over the years that they don't mind taking guys with character issues or taking guys that other teams or other people in the draft world are kind of like iffy against or kind of trying to shun away from. The Seahawks have never been afraid to go after guys like that. And Jalen Carter he just feels like the perfect Seattle Seahawk. It's a team that they couldn't, like, you watch that Seahawks defense towards the end of last year, they could not stop the run to save their lives. That defense as a whole, they were up and down at best. And they really need a force in the middle, not just as a pass rusher, but also as someone who can be that dominant run defender. And Jalen Carter can be both. He can be both a dominant run defender and a dominant pass rusher. Put him in there with Seattle and that culture. It's a really great culture with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's one of those coaches where he's fun and outgoing, but not in the way where players want to walk all over him. He's like that fun outgoing where it's like, oh, he's so cool to the point where I don't want to leave him disappointed. He's kind of like that kind of coach with a lot of those players. And Jalen Carter, I think we'll see that. I think they'll get him. I think they'll get his head straight. And I think he will be a dominant football player for sure. That was never in question. It's the off-field stuff, and it's, the decisions he's made, his bad pro day, the incident back in January after the national championship game, that the car crash that tragically took two people's lives. It's all those red flags that all just kind of popped up at once for Jalen Carter. And I think Seattle will not necessarily look past that, but I think they'll look at that and be like, hey, we'll keep his head on straight. We'll get him on the right track. He'll be fine with us. So I think Seattle would be a perfect landing spot in multiple ways for Jalen Carter. Now, the Arizona Cardinals, and would you look at that? This is what I'm talking about. Trade down 3 spots, have one guy in mind, trade down 3 spots, and still get the guy you would have taken at 3 in Will Anderson. I mean, he is as blue chip can get. And he would be the perfect defensive centerpiece to build around. I mean, they play against 49ers twice a year. They see how dominant the Niners are with Nick Bosa. Will Anderson can be this team's Nick Bosa. I mean, Will Anderson to the Cardinals is probably the second most mocked landing spot in this draft. We'll get to the number 1 later on. And yeah, man, it's just perfect. And now the Raiders. All the quarterbacks are off the board. I mean, at this point, it's probably, I mean, they could trade down here, but I don't see them necessarily doing so. With who, I'm not sure. But I don't see this as a trade down situation for the Raiders. I mean, they need some help in the secondary. Devon Witherspoon, he's the best player available. That's really what it is best player available. Devon Witherspoon to the Raiders. I mean, he's just so friggin' good, bro. He's so good. I mean, they need what is it? They signed was it? Did they sign Nate Hobbs? I believe. I believe they signed Nate Hobbs in the offseason. Hold on, I could be mistaken on that. Hold on one second. Yes, they did. That could be a solid young corner tandem with Hobbs and Witherspoon. And it's another situation with the Raiders where it's defensively, I mean, there are a lot of issues with that team, but defensively, they were a rough bunch. And they need something outside of Max Crosby to be excited about on defense. And Devon Witherspoon, arguably, I mean, he is a top 5 defensive player in this draft. I was gonna say he's arguably the best, but I was like, he's not better as a prospect than Anderson or even Jalen Carter for that matter. But he's a young defensive player that they can get excited about, that they can build the secondary around. And now Atlanta at 8. And this is a tricky one. I've heard a lot of Bijan Robinson. That can make a lot of sense. I feel like you could trade down and still get Bijan. Christian Gonzalez. My God, Christian Gonzalez paired up. I mean, that secondary would be nasty. And that's the more I thought about it, the more I like Christian Gonzalez to the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, think about it. That secondary was a problem last year, and it's almost taken in one offseason a complete 180. They still got AJ Terrell there. They still have Richie Grant there. They signed Jesse Bates in the offseason. They traded for Jeff Okudah, and now you draft Christian Gonzalez and your long-term corner tandem, because I don't think the long-term corner tandem is, unless he takes this insane leap now, I don't think Jeff Okudah is the answer to being your number 2 corner next to AJ Terrell. He could if he just takes this massive leap now that he's free from Detroit, but I don't see that happening. They only traded him for like what was it, a 5th round pick for a reason? And Christian Gonzalez, I mean, you watch him, he's just so fluid. He's just so smooth of an athlete. And I think he's not the best zone corner in the world, but I think that's something that could be coachable. Christian Gonzalez with AJ Terrell, with Jesse Bates and Richie Grant on the back end, that all of a sudden went from a weakness in Atlanta to a true strength. I mean, it makes my mouth water when I think of that secondary. Wow, man. Now the Chicago Bears. Now, here's the thing about Chicago. They will take a tackle, and it will be Peter Skoronski. Mainly because I was shocked when they had like over $100 million in available cap space in the offseason, and yet they didn't really invest at tackle that much. And at first I was confused as to why, and then I realized they must really love the top of this tackle class, and they're in prime position to get a tackle of their choosing with guys like Skoronski, Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones. And they were probably looking to take advantage of the 9th pick to take advantage of these top tackles, because the talent in this tackle class, really this offensive line class in general, is not very good outside of the top guys. So getting your franchise left tackle and Peter Skoronski, him, Tevin Jenkins on the right side, there you go. You're set. You got your blind side protecting Justin Fields, and which, by the way, the whole thing at the start of the offseason was, oh, can they get rid of Justin Fields? Was always bullshit. I always thought it was bullshit. I mean, it didn't make sense to me why you would just give up on Justin Fields when he showed flashes last year. He has the fan base excited for the first time in a long time. You need to protect him. I just want to applaud the Bears for a second. They spent a lot of money in free agency. They made an incredible deal when they traded out of the number 1 pick. They got DJ Moore. They got a shiny weapon for Justin Fields. And now in this situation, they get Peter Skoronski, a franchise left tackle to protect him. They are showing that they love Justin Fields. They believe he can be their guy. I believe he can be their guy. And I'm just saying, don't be shocked if Jalen Hurts take not Jalen Hurts, if Justin Fields takes a Jalen Hurts level jump in year 3. I'm just putting that out there. And Peter Skoronski at 9 will definitely help with that. I mean, you got to protect him as much as you can. Now, Philadelphia. God, I want to take Bijan so badly. I want to take Bijan Robinson here so freaking badly, but I know Howie Roseman's not going to do that. He's not that kind of guy. Tackle is a sneaky need for them, especially right tackle, because you don't know what where Lane Johnson's head is at. And even then, like he's up there and he's not, he doesn't have a lot of years left in his body. So tackle is a sneaky need for them. And edge rusher, where is he? There's one edge rusher that's still on the board. The fuck is he? Why is he 20? Why is Tyree Wilson 28th on the board? What the fuck, PFF? But this is. Can I go on a slight rant about PFF for a second? PFF confuses the shit out of me a lot of times because Tyree Wilson, I think, is a consensus top 10 player. I mean, he's not as good as Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, but he's still a freaking good player worthy of a top 10 pick. And yet they have him all the way down at 28 behind guys like Emmanuel Forbes, Anton Harrison. Overall, like, I don't get it, bro. But get out of here. But it's Tyree Wilson. I mean, hey, I know the team was first in sacks last year. I know they had like four players with double digit sacks last year. But hey, you can never have too many pass rushers. They lost Javon Hargrave in the offseason. But Tyree Wilson, he is 6'6", 270 pounds. He is a gigantic monster on the edge. Now, he doesn't win as consistently as someone at that size you think would, but in Philly with that coaching, I do think he will be molded properly. I think he'll get the right coaching. I mean, plus, and he will be protected in at least first couple of years, surrounded in that pass rush unit with guys like Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham. As old as he is, Brandon Graham is still there. They have a lot of guys. Josh Sweat is still there. They have a lot of guys there that he won't have to be like on the field as much. And I didn't even mention Jordan Davis on the interior, but he won't have to be asked to do much because that pass rush is so dominant. But the Eagles are a team that they always draft for future years rather than for the now necessarily, even though this team you think coming off a Super Bowl appearance should be drafting for the now, they're always we're thinking 3 steps ahead sort of team. And I respect the hell out of it. Hell, that's what got them to the Super Bowl last year was having that strategy in the draft. Now the Tennessee Titans, I mean, this I feel like is another one that's obvious. Paris Johnson. I mean, they cut Taylor Lewan in the offseason. That's a team where them and the New Orleans Saints are teams that just feel like dead men walking. They are a team that they are completely determined to just blow it all up. They cut a lot of key players. Derrick Henry has been on the trade block for a couple weeks, and it's a team that is hitting the reset button, and to the point where even quarterback that like they are a team that could definitely trade up for a quarterback in this draft. But at this situation, they're sticking at 11. They need a franchise caliber left tackle, and Paris Johnson is definitely that guy. All right, so now the Houston Texans back on the clock at 12 after they hit the bullet. It took CJ Stroud at 2. Now they're in a situation where this absolutely, in my mind, should be a wide receiver. They need some kind of talent, a receiver, a true number one. for CJ Stroud to play with. And to me, don't go too far. Stay in state. Go with Quentin Johnston. Now, the hype around Quentin Johnston has definitely faded as the draft process has gone on. And there is good reason for it. He's a 6'4 big body receiver that doesn't play like it. And he's very soft is not the word. Soft is not the word. But he's just not the most overly physical player in jump ball situations. He's not a great contested catch guy. He doesn't use his big body to box out DBs or to go and get those 50-50 jump balls. He's much more effective as almost kind of like he's like an oversized Debo Samuel in a lot of ways, where he just get the football in his hands and he is damn near impossible to tackle. Like, that's the reason why Quentin Johnston got as much hype as he did, was because when he gets the ball in his hands, look out. He is a threat to score whenever he has the ball in his hands. That's the intrigue around Quentin Johnston. And the physicality stuff, I think that is something that will be coached into him. I do genuinely believe that is something that you can be coached into doing, is playing more physical. So I do think that he will eventually get over that. But his ability with the ball in his hands is just something to marvel at. So, and a team in Houston that they just traded Brandon Cooks, they don't have a lot of high-end talent. Quentin Johnston can absolutely be that game changer for them and a great receiver for CJ Stroud. Now, the Green Bay Packers. This was the pick they acquired in the pick swap for the Aaron Rodgers trade, which finally went through yesterday. I mean, it should be JSN. It should be. But remember, guys, it's Brian Gutekunst. It's not going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba, even though it absolutely should be. We all know he loves his defensive Georgia players. Hell, he took two defensive players out of Georgia in the first round last year. In Quay Walker and what was the defensive tackle? Devontae Wyatt was. So he's probably going to go right back to the well again. Though, in this situation, I actually would like the idea of Nolan Smith being a Green Bay Packer. I mean, he's small for for an edge rusher. He really is. But he's just so freaking athletic and fast and explosive off the line. I really do think him on the opposite end of Rashawn Gary, that could be a dominant, terrifying pass rush duo for a long, long time. And if you're not going to be competitive on the offensive side of the ball, depending on if Jordan Love hits or not, you can at least rely on the fact that, like, hey, our pass rush is going to be really freaking solid. So I like that for the Green Bay Packers. Now, New England, my favorite team on the clock at 14. I'm not even going to take a pick here because this team is known for trading back, and they probably will again. Now, the question is who they trade down with. The top two tackles are gone, and I think if both the tackles are gone, they're going to trade down here. And it does come to a matter of Broderick Jones or Darnell Wright. If New England is not interested in them, trade with a team that would probably be interested in them. And to me, there's one team that screams out, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Trade pick 19 for 14. Let's chuck in 82 and 179. Offer the trade, and it's accepted. So there we are. Tampa Bay on the clock now, and they're going to take Broderick Jones because that offensive line outside of Tristan Wirfs is not very good. Like it's sneakily one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. It's a team that the interior was decimated last year with guys leaving. Alex Kappa, was it retired? No, that was Ali Marpet that retired. Alex Kappa left in free agency. Ryan Jensen, their Pro Bowl center, got injured in training camp. Tampa as a team is about to take a huge hit now that Tom Brady is officially retired. So it's they are about to be in for a rude awakening next year. Like, hey, so Tampa fans, I hope you enjoyed being on top while you had it, because it's about to be a rude awakening for you. But yeah, I mean, this team, offensive line wise, they are decimated. I mean, outside of Tristan Wirfs, you really have nothing else. So get a tackle, go up and get him. Broderick Jones, he's only been a tackle for, what was it, at least on the left side, for like what, 2 years. So he's gonna need development. So, but I do think he will be developed properly in Tampa. I don't like Todd Bowles as a head coach. I like him much more as a defensive guy, but I like their coaching staff enough to not mess up someone like Broderick Jones. So, and plus at this point, you need it desperately. You need offensive line help desperately. So why not get a guy that you feel like can be a franchise left tackle for, I guess, Baker Mayfield now? And I mean, you could get a quarterback later. You can get a guy like Hendon Hooker later if you wanted to. Here we go. The New York Jets on the clock at 15. Tackle, there's really only one tackle that's left, and that's Darnell Wright. I mean, he's primarily a right tackle, and they need someone to replace George Fant. And also, I mean, you don't know how good he is on the left side, but they need tackle help because, like I said, George Fant left. Mekhi Becton, he's good when he's healthy. The problem is he's never freaking healthy. Now, Darnell Wright played primarily right tackle at Tennessee. So, like I said, I don't know how good he would be on the left side. It's a matter of we'll just have to wait and see. Stick him at right, maybe move him over to left if Becton gets hurt. And if he's not good, then hey, he's just a right tackle, which is fine because he's a dominant right tackle. I mean, watch the game against Alabama. He shut down Will Anderson in that game. It was impressive. But yeah, they need tackle help. So Darnell Wright to the New York Jets just makes a lot of sense to me in multiple ways. Now the Washington Commanders. This, with Eric Bieniemy coming over to be the offensive coordinator, Dalton Kincaid, he is the definition of the modern tight end. Not the greatest blocker, kind of undersized in a lot of ways, especially considering next to most of the guys in this class. In fact, the top two tight ends in this class are undersized compared to the rest of the guys in this class. But Kincaid, he's not much of a blocker, but he is an excellent, excellent threat in the receiving game. And Dalton Kincaid can absolutely be the Travis Kelce and Eric Bieniemy's offense. Now, he's not going to be Travis Kelce. No one will ever be Travis Kelce. But he absolutely has that physical profile, that play style to be the Travis Kelce type in Bieniemy's offense. So that just makes all the sense in the world to me. And now the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember earlier when I said that there was one spot that is probably the most penciled in, and it's this one, Joey Porter Jr. I know it screams of nepotism, but Joey Porter to Pittsburgh. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they're already printing the jerseys out. And think about it. Like, his dad was a longtime linebacker in Pittsburgh. He was a former defensive coach in Pittsburgh. I mean, they love the Steelers. They're weird like that. They love their family bloodlines. They love all that shit. So Joey Porter, like I said, they probably already have his number picked out and everything. So Joey Porter, that is the most penciled in. If he's not off the board by this point, he will fall no farther than 17. And if for some reason he does fall past 17, I will be stunned. Detroit Lions, back on the board at 18. They traded up for Anthony Richardson. This might be really irresponsible. And I know they signed David Montgomery. I know they did. But Bijan Robinson in this system, in this building, in this team would just be nasty behind that offensive line. And I didn't even think Texas had that great of an offensive line. So, my God, when Bijan Robinson gets there in Detroit, he's going to have wide open running lanes for days. And, I've heard a lot of LT comparisons for Bijan. If he lands in Detroit, he can absolutely be LaDainian Tomlinson 2.0. And then when you mix in with the idea of them trading up to get Anthony Richardson, in 2 years, when Richardson develops, you get him in there as the starter with Bijan Robinson next to him behind that offensive line with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams to throw the football to, with a defense that's hopefully improved in talent by that point. I mean, we don't even have to talk about the defense, just the offense. Richardson, Robinson, St. Brown, Jameson Williams behind that offensive line. Hey, rest of the NFL, good luck. That would be just, I know that's irresponsible, and I don't even think Lions fans would like it necessarily initially, because I know there's been this whole thing over the years of don't take a running back in the first round. I've been one of those people that say don't take running back in the first round, but Robinson's just such a generationally different type of player at the position that it wouldn't make sense not to take him in the first round. And Detroit, I like this first round for the Lions. Bijan at 18, trading up for Anthony Richardson at 3. It's just perfect. It's perfect in my eyes, and I get giddy. I know it's probably irresponsible, and Lions fans won't like it, but I don't care. Now New England finally on the clock. Here's the thing. This is a team that's always so tough to pick for. Defensively, there are some needs. They could look at corner depth, and Deonte Banks is still there. He would be a phenomenal piece in that secondary. Wide receiver is also a need. And here's the thing. Edge rusher, Lucas Van Ness. I've opened up to the idea of Lucas Van Ness in New England. He'd basically be a better version of what they have in Dietrich Wise. And I would think they probably would go defense had they not, throughout this process, displayed such a gimme attitude about Zay Flowers. I mean, he is, if you haven't watched Zay Flowers tape at Boston College, please do so. It's so fun to watch. I mean, he is, I know he's small. He's only 5'9". So some people might view him as a slot only guy. He is not. He is the definition of place him anywhere and he will thrive. You place him on the outside, he can beat guys over the top. You place him in the slot, he can dominate. I mean, a lot of his tape, he's dominated on crossing routes, jet sweeps, end arounds. He's won on contested balls down the field. He had this one catch. Oh gosh, I can't even remember. I think it was against, oh gosh, who was it against? I don't even remember who it was against, but he had this insane play where it was just a straight post route, and his quarterback, who sucked, by the way, that guy at Boston College, whoever he is, he pissed me off watching him. But he had this one play where he was running a post, quarterback threw it up, he had 2 defenders around him, and 5'9" just jumps up and plucks it out of the defender's hand and scores a touchdown. It was insane. And Zay Flowers, I mean, Patriots offensive staff, they worked with him at not the senior bowl, at the East West Shrine game. They've had him come in for visits. He's not that far away. He won't even have to drive far. He probably wouldn't even have to relocate to play in New England, but that would just be, and he gives them an all-around element of a potential true number one that they just don't have right now. And all of a sudden, that fills out the receiving core with, you put Juju in the slot, you have Tyquan as your deep threat, and now you have Zay Flowers as your do-it-all X-wide receiver who can play slot, who can play really anywhere. And we know Belichick loves his versatility. And when you have a skill set where you can do anything you're asked of and do it well, what Patriot receiver reminds you of that? Julian Edelman. He was kind of that guy. Now, he was never the athlete Zay Flowers is. So he'd be Julian Edelman on steroids. So I just love that fit in New England, Zay Flowers. Will they go there? Probably not, but it would be so amazing if they did. Now Seattle back on the clock at 20. They already took Jalen Carter. And here's the thing. There are some guys they can go with. Deontay Banks, he's not the type of corner they go for. I really like. I know he would basically be their wide receiver 3, but I like the idea of Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle because he would really make that. Think about it. Jackson Smith and Jigba is basically a bigger Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is a slot receiver through and through. Speed is not his game. I mean, he didn't run at the combine for a reason because he knows speed is not his game. You put him in a situation where Geno Smith coming off a career year, you have DK Metcalf on the outside, Tyler Lockett as your speedster. He's up there in age, but he's still a great deep threat, one of the better deep threats in the NFL. And Jackson Smith and Jigba in the slot, that might be the best receiving core in the NFL day one. Because Jackson Smith and Jigba he's a guy that can rival Amon-Ra St. Brown for being the best slot receiver in football day one. Absolutely. I mean, that's just Seattle, man. I've gushed over them ever since the start of last season with how they've handled things from the Russell Wilson trade to now. It's just, God, this would be incredible. I don't think Jackson Smith and Jigba falls to 20, but if he does, I would look at JSN going to Seattle because that'd be perfect. Next up, the Los Angeles Chargers. And if you're the Chargers, you're pissed that the Patriots took Zay Flowers in 19 because had that not been the case, he would have been the pick here at 21. But let's see here. What other receivers are still left on the board? Jordan Addison. I see Jordan Addison as more a number 2 guy. I wouldn't take Josh Downs here, not this high. What other things do they need here? Corner is definitely still available because, I mean, J.C. Jackson, he got hurt last year, but even then, like, even when he was playing, he wasn't the best. I mean, Deontay Banks absolutely could, but wide receiver is definitely a need for them. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Allen's up there in age, and neither guy can really stay healthy. I don't mind the idea of Jordan Addison to the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, he's not a guy that I trust necessarily to be a true number 1 because he's just really undersized. But going to the Chargers, I almost said San Diego. Going to the Chargers, he wouldn't have to be relied on to be the number 1 or even the number even the number 2. Like, he could come in as a number 3 and be a like Jordan Addison, honestly, as a number 3 receiver is really valuable to a team like the Chargers. And if one of those guys get hurt, he can sneak in as a number 2 and still be as dominant. Now, if both Williams and Allen get hurt and you have to rely on Addison as your number 1, that's where I get kind of iffy. But just the idea of Jordan Addison staying in the state of California, staying in Los Angeles to play for the Chargers, I really like that fit. And now the Baltimore Ravens, I mean, you got no other receivers, and it would be a receiver here. But I really do think you can trade down and get like someone like Josh Downs at the back end of the first. So who would want to trade out? Who's a guy that they can trade that can be traded up for? Because I don't really know. Do you think the Buffalo Bill? I just realized something. The Buffalo Bills, they need tackle help bad. And DeJuan Jones is still there. So here we go. We're going to make this trade with the Buffalo Bills jumping up, swapping picks. We'll throw on pick 1. How about pick 91? Trade is rejected. Okay. How about that? And there. There we go. So the Buffalo Bills have traded up. They need a tackle. They're trading up to get DeJuan Jones. I mean, DeJuan Jones, I mean, if you saw him at the Senior Bowl, he is fucking huge. He's like, what, 6'8", well over 300 pounds. He is a monster of a human being. And they did, like, Spencer Brown is not the answer at right tackle long term. I do think DeJuan Jones, I mean, the right side, I mean, think about when you think about the offensive line, the left side is more of your athletic types, and the right side is more of your power side. DeJuan Jones is a power player, and you put him on the right side to replace Spencer Brown. I think the Buffalo Bills can benefit from him being their franchise right tackle. And considering that they don't like to run the ball and aren't successful at running the ball, having him to run behind on the right side, that can help out your run game a lot. So I like the idea of Buffalo trading up to ensure that they get DeJuan Jones. Now, I almost said the Miami Dolphins. They haven't got a first round pick this year. The Minnesota Vikings, there we go. I mean, their defense was horrendous last year, and they need corner help desperately. And Deontay Banks falling to 23 is just insane. Like, Deontay Banks is one of my favorite players in this class. He is he's probably the most complete corner in this class. He's a willing tackler. He's an excellent man defender. He's an intelligent player, an intelligent zone player, which is something you don't get out of a lot of corners coming into the league, is the zone IQ that Deontay Banks displayed at Maryland. It helps that Maryland ran pretty much every coverage under the book. Under the sun. There we go. Under the okay, whatever. But Deontay Banks at Minnesota, I mean, they lost Patrick Peterson, but he was up there in age anyway. And they need somebody in that second. They need somebody in that secondary or just that defense in general to feel great about. And Deontay Banks can be that guy. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, for them, it's pretty much best player available. And to me, that's Brian Branch. I know in this situation, Kalijah Cansey is the best player available, but Brian Branch, he'd be their do-it-all safety. I know they re-signed Andrew Wingard. Is that his name? Yes, Andrew Wingard in the offseason. But Brian Branch, I mean, he played primarily slot corner at Alabama, but so do most safeties coming out in the draft. So he has the ability and the skill set to play free safety. If no more, he can be a really good nickel for them. And the Jags are a team that don't really need a lot of things. They don't have a lot of needs. So just getting the best player available, which in this situation is Brian Branch, you really can't go wrong in that situation. Now, the New York Giants, all the first round caliber receivers are off the board. And or at least guys that you feel comfortable with. So they really need somebody. They need interior line help really bad. And in my eyes, the best interior lineman is Osiris Torrance. I mean, they need something on the offensive side. They need to keep their new $40 million quarterback and Daniel Jones upright in some way. And plus, as far as wide receivers, there are guys in the second round or the third round that I would really like that you could take there. It beats reaching on a guy at pick 25. So Osiris Torrance, it fills a need. I like that pick a lot. Now the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I've seen this player a lot, and I really, really like it. Oh, Kalijah Cansey would be fun. They need help. They need like a big nose tackle, and Mozzie Smith can be that nose tackle for them. I mean, it's it's a perfect spot in Dan Quinn's defense. I mean, I like Kalijah Cansey better personally than Mozzie Smith, but for what the Cowboys need, Kalijah Cansey, he's just too small. And Mozzie Smith, they need like that big dominant run defender. And Mozzie Smith is probably the best run defender in this class on the interior and outside of Jalen Carter, of course. But that's really what they need is a good run defender. And that defense was really struggling on the interior last year. And Mozzie Smith can absolutely be that guy. Now, the Baltimore Ravens, they traded down. Now I feel comfortable with taking Josh Downs. He is a excellent slot receiver. Probably the best slot receiver in this class outside of JSN. And he's probably the best red zone threat. I know that's weird to say of a guy that's 5'9", because when you think of red zone threat, you think of like these big, like 6'3", 6'4" guys that you just throw a fade to in the end zone and they can go up and get it. But Josh Downs is a red zone threat because he's so great in short area quickness. He has such great short area quickness. And just watch him run a whip route on the goal line. It is one of the sexiest things you will ever see. And I like that a lot. Just get another weapon for a quarterback who, again, may or may not be there, but I think he ultimately will, Lamar Jackson, stay in Baltimore. And if he does, get him a guy like Josh Downs. You sign Odell in the offseason, get him another security blanket in Josh Downs, who, by the way, also has some of the better hands in this class, some of the best hands in this class. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, they need tight end. They haven't really had a good tight end since CJ Uzomah left, and Michael Mayer is still there. I mean, it makes all the sense of the world. Get Joe Burrow another security blanket. I mean, they exercised, what was it, yesterday? They exercised Joe Burrow's fifth-year option. And they're going to have to pay Jamar Chase at some point. They're going to have to pay T. Higgins at some point. You can't keep all those guys. So you need somebody to be another security blanket and another viable receiving option for a long time for Joe Burrow. And Michael Mayer for another 4 or 5 years can absolutely be that if he pans out. Now, he is the definition of he's not the best athlete, but he is good enough to be a really good top 15 to top 10 tight end in the NFL. He really is. Now, the New Orleans Saints, this is tough. This is tough because I mentioned this earlier that the Saints are another team like the Titans that are just, they feel like dead men walking. They just need somebody. And I don't know what it is, but it just feels like a Miles Murphy landing spot. I can't really explain to you why. I just get that gut feeling that Miles Murphy is going to end up as a New Orleans Saint. For the life of me, I can't tell you why, but it's just some things can't be explained. It's more so just gut feeling more than anything. And now the Philadelphia Eagles, they took, who was it? Tyree Wilson. They took Tyree Wilson at 10. Now at pick 30. Who could they get here at pick 30? Oh my gosh, Lucas Van Ness is still there. Do we want to take Lucas Van Ness and just have a fuck you pass rush? Or what else do they need here? I mean, is there any wide receivers? Nothing that I would take at the back end. Interior, I mean, they're good on the offensive line. Ryan Brzee, Kalijah Cansey is still there, man. And I like Kalijah Cansey a lot. Could he be? Because hear me out. They have Jordan Davis. They lost Javon Hargrave. I know they drafted Tyree Wilson. I know this might be overkill. Though I did mention earlier about Lane Johnson. It's really between Kalijah Cansey and Anton Harrison. And yeah, again, because I'm thinking about it, and Lane Johnson is just so up in the air because you don't know how much longer he's going to play. So I would just be safe and just take Anton Harrison here, just so you have some insurance at tackle. I really was debating between him and Kalijah Cansey. Now I freaking love Kalijah, but I'm picking the safe option there in Anton Harrison. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, they could really just take anybody here, and it would be just nasty. they're in a situation of like, let's just take best player available. And as much as it pains me to do it, Kalijah Kancey is the best player available. That's what the Chiefs are. It really doesn't matter who they take. They're going to be a good football team regardless. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. My first round mock draft officially in the books. And just as a reminder, I will be here live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube for the live stream of the mock draft. Not the mock draft, the NFL draft. Sorry. But anyway, I am so excited for it. I cannot wait to be with you guys, to react to every single pick. But with that being said, I'm Double Diesel. Peace.